The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council gleamed under artificial stars as hundreds of alien species gathered for another day of political theater. Ambassador Velfor stretched his forearms and clicked his sharp mandibles together, already bored by the morning's agenda. The hegemony representative had seen it all before. Dozens of pathetic species begging for recognition, protection, or basic rights they would never receive. Today's entertainment came in the form of a human djinn, walked slowly toward the speaking platform, his worn boots echoing against the polished floor. His gray hair showed years of stress, and his simple brown uniform looked shabby compared to the elaborate robes and biomechanical suits of the other delegates. The human carried a single datapad and nothing else. Another refugee story whispered. Counselor Zeektha, her reptilian tongue flicking out in amusement. How many is this now? 50? 100? They multiply like parasites, hissed another voice from the Scarix delegation, always claiming they have some great homeworld, some powerful fleet waiting in the darkness. Belthar raised one hand for silence, though his mandibles continued their clicking rhythm that all present knew meant mockery. Speak quickly, human. The council has real business to attend to today. Jin stepped forward and activated his datapad. A holographic star map appeared above his head, showing a small yellow star surrounded by several planets. Honored counselors, I come representing the human settlements across 17 sectors. We seek formal recognition of our homeworld and our right to exist as a free species. The chamber erupted in laughter. The sound echoed off the crystal walls like breaking glass, each species adding their own version of amusement. The gaseous Nephilim created swirling patterns of contempt in their containment suits. The crystalline Vorthok chimed like broken bells. Earth again, Velthar said, his voice carrying across the chamber. This mythical paradise that supposedly birthed your kind. Tell me, human, if this world is so powerful, so advanced, why do we find your people scattered across the galaxy? Like cosmic dust. Why do you work in our mines, serve in our kitchens, and die in our factories? Jin's hands trembled slightly, but his voice remained steady. Because we were forced to leave. Because we had no choice but to scatter and survive however we could. Convenient, sneered Counselor Zeektha. A homeland that vanished without a trace, leaving behind only stories and dreams. How very... human. The datapad in Jin's hand showed detailed star charts, population records, and historical documents, but none of the council members bothered to look. They had heard variations of this story from humans across the galaxy. Always the same tale, a powerful homeworld called Earth, a great fleet, ancient technologies, and promises of return. Petition is denied, Velthor announced without even pretending to consider the evidence. The hegemony recognizes no human territorial claims. You exist at our pleasure, serve at our convenience, and die when we decide you are no longer useful. Jin closed his datapad slowly. His jaw muscles tightened, but he said nothing more. He had expected this outcome, just like the dozens of human delegates who had come before him. Someone had to keep trying. Someone had to keep the hope alive. As Jin walked away from the platform, his footsteps seemed to echo differently now. Some of the younger council members noticed that he did. Not Bo did not plead, did not show any sign of defeat. He simply turned and left, carrying himself with the quiet dignity of someone who knew something the others did not, far away. In the cold darkness between stars, Captain Hannah sat in the cramped cockpit of her aging transport ship. The vessel had seen better decades, but it was fast and quiet, perfect for running supplies to human settlements that the hegemony pretended did not exist. Her communication system crackled to life, an encrypted signal. The transmission was weak, full of static, and breaking up badly. But Hannah recognized the voice immediately. Hannah ... This is Tay ... Kepler-44 to B ... The signal faded in and out. They came. Ships everywhere, relocating the colony. Nice. Blood ran cold. Commander Tay had been running the settlement on Kepler-44 to B for 15 years. 3,000 humans called that rock home, scratching out a living mining rare crystals and trying to stay invisible. The coordinates. Now Tay's voice was weaker now, interrupted by sounds of explosions and screaming. Sol system. Third planet. ... The stories are true. They're waiting. The transmission cut to static. Hannah stared at her navigation screen, her hands shaking as she entered the coordinates Tay had died to send her. Every human knew the stories of Earth. Every child grew up hearing about the mythical homeworld where humanity had originated. Most adults dismissed it as fantasy, a comforting lie told to make their scattered existence more bearable. But what if it was not a lie? Her ship's engines hummed to life as she changed course, heading toward a small yellow star that might hold the answer to every question humanity had ever asked about itself. Behind her, another human settlement burned in the darkness, its people scattered or dead. Ahead lay either their salvation or the final end of a beautiful dream. The journey would take weeks, but for the first time in years, Hannah felt something. She had almost forgotten hope. The elevator descended through solid rock for nearly 10 minutes, before Admiral Wu finally reached the bottom. 3 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean, it's a place that did not exist on any map. The heart of Earth's true power had been waiting patiently for 3 centuries. The command center stretched out before him like a cathedral of technology. Massive. Holographic displays showed star maps, fleet positions, and data streams from across the galaxy. Officers moved between workstations with quiet efficiency, their faces bearing the genetic markers of families who had guarded this secret for generations. Woo! Walked to the central command platform, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. At 65 years old, he had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. His grandfather had stood in this same room during the Great Exodus, when humanity had scattered to the stars to escape destruction. His father had maintained the vigil, keeping Earth's defenses hidden while their people suffered in exile. Now, it was his turn. Status report, he said quietly. Colonel Min looked up from her control station, her young face serious with responsibility. Like all the officers present, she had been born and raised in the hidden cities beneath Earth's surface. Her entire life had been devoted to this single purpose, waiting for the day when humanity would return to the stars. Orbital defense platforms are coming online now, she reported, her fingers moving across quantum interfaces that responded to her touch like living things. We have 47 battle stations positioned around Earth's orbit, each one armed, with weapons that no alien species has ever seen. Above them, hidden behind carefully constructed asteroid fields and debris clouds, massive structures began to unfold. To any passing ship, they would look like natural space junk. But each platform contained enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Luna Base reports full operational status, continued another officer. The shipyards on the far side of the moon have been working non-stop for the past 50 years. Construction crews are putting the finishing touches on the last dreadnought. As we speak, Wu nodded, studying the tactical displays that showed the true scope of Earth's hidden fleet. For 300 years, while the galaxy believed humanity was scattered and weak, Earth had been building, using technology stolen by human slaves, improved by human engineers, and perfected in secret laboratories that officially did not exist. "Show me the fleet composition," he ordered. The main display changed to show rows upon rows of warships. Each vessel was unique, incorporating the best technology from every alien species that had ever underestimated human intelligence. Plasma weapons that could melt through any known armor. Vorthok shield generators that bent space itself. Nephilim phase drives that allowed ships to pass through solid matter. But these were not crude copies. Human engineers had spent centuries improving each design, finding weaknesses and creating something entirely new. The ships floating in Earth's hidden shipyards were not just equal to anything the galaxy possessed. They were superior. 1,000 ships in the primary fleet, Min reported, each one crewed by volunteers from the underground cities. Each one equipped with weapons and defenses that combined the best of 30 different alien technologies. Wu smiled grimly. The galaxy had made a crucial mistake when they scattered humanity. They had assumed that breaking up human civilization would make them weak. Instead, it had made them invisible. For 3 centuries, human refugees had worked in alien shipyards, studied in alien universities, and served in alien militaries. Every piece of technology, every military secret, every weakness had been carefully documented and sent home to Earth. "What about intelligence from the outer colonies?" he asked. "Still coming in," replied Commander Park from the communications station. "Our people have been reporting from 17 sectors. We know the exact location of every major military base, every government center, every industrial complex that matters. The aliens treated our people like servants and slaves. They never imagined we were watching and learning. Deep beneath the ocean floor, massive manufacturing complexes hummed with activity. Automated factories that had been idle for centuries roared back to life, producing ammunition, spare parts, and new weapons at an incredible rate. The sound echoed through tunnels that stretched for hundreds of kilometers beneath the Earth's crust, in hidden cities built into underground caverns. Millions of humans who had never seen the surface prepared for war. These were the descendants of those who had stayed behind during the Great Exodus, living in secret while their brothers and sisters suffered among the stars. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Admiral Min said softly, "We're receiving a priority transmission. From the Outer Rim, Captain Hannah is requesting permission to return home." Wu turned to face her. Captain Hannah had been running supplies to human settlements for 20 years, one of the few who still believed in Earth's existence. If she was coming home, it meant something important had happened. "Grant her permission," he said. "Prepare the fleet for deployment. After 300 years of waiting, it's time for humanity to remind the galaxy who we really are." Above them, the first rays of dawn broke across the Pacific Ocean. To anyone watching, it looked like another peaceful morning on a quiet world. They could not see the thousands of ships hidden in asteroid fields, the weapons platforms disguised as space debris, or the millions of people preparing for the greatest military operation in galactic history. The sleeping giant was finally awakening, and the galaxy would never be the same. Ambassador Velthar lifted the steaming cup to his mandibles, savoring the bitter taste of his morning brew. Through the crystal windows of his palace, he could see the twin suns of Hegemony Prime rising over the capital city. Below, millions of his people went about their daily lives, secure in the knowledge that their world was the most powerful in the galaxy, the Hegemony. Military controlled 300 star systems. Their fleets patrolled the trade routes, collecting taxes and tribute from lesser species. Their weapons were the finest in known space. Their shields had never been breached, and their armies had never known defeat. Velthor smiled as he thought about the human who had stood before the council yesterday. Jin, with his pathetic datapad and his fairy tales about Earth. The ambassador had enjoyed crushing that small hope, watching the human's face as reality set in. Humans were good for manual labor and little else. The idea that they could pose any threat was laughable. A flash of light caught his attention through the window. Velthar looked up, expecting to see a commercial transport or perhaps a patrol ship. Instead, he saw something impossible. Ships were appearing in the sky above his world. Not one or two, but hundreds. They materialized out of empty space without any warning, their hulls gleaming with unknown metals and strange energy patterns. The vessels were unlike anything in the Hegemony database, sleek, deadly, and clearly built for war. Velthor's communication device chirped urgently. He activated it with a trembling hand, and the panicked voice of Fleet Admiral Crix filled his chamber. "Ambassador, we have a situation. Unknown ships are appearing all over the system. Our sensors cannot identify their origin or their technology. They are not responding to our hails." "How many ships?" Velthar asked, his voice barely steady. "Over 300 in the immediate area. More are arriving every second. They appear to be surrounding the planet." Through his window, Velthor watched the alien vessels take position above the major cities. They moved with perfect coordination, like pieces of a vast puzzle falling into place. Each ship was different, yet they all shared the same deadly purpose. "Activate the planetary shields," he ordered. Deploy the home fleet. These invaders will learn what happens when they threaten the hegemony. The massive energy barriers that protected Hegemony Prime flickered to life, creating a shimmering dome over the entire planet. The shields had never failed, not once, in 500 years of operation. They could stop any weapon, deflect any attack, and protect the world from even the largest enemy fleet. The alien ships did not attempt to break through the barriers. Instead, they did something that made Velthor's blood run cold. They passed right through the shields as if they were not there. "Impossible," he whispered, dropping his cup. The hot liquid splashed across the floor, but he barely noticed. "Nothing can penetrate our defenses. Nothing." The first explosions began moments later. Bright flashes of light erupted across the planet's surface as military bases, weapon installations, and fleet command centers were destroyed with surgical precision. The attackers were not targeting civilian areas or industrial centers. They were systematically eliminating every military asset the hegemony possessed. Velthar watched in horror as the orbital shipyards exploded in silent fireballs. Hundreds of warships that had been under construction were reduced to glowing debris in seconds. The defensive platforms that protected the trade routes were next, their massive guns falling silent as energy beams carved through their armor. "Admiral, report," he shouted into his communicator. "They are using our own weapons against us." Crix's voice was filled with terror. Scarix plasma cannons, Vorthok shield technology, Nephilim phase drives. But improved somehow, made more powerful. "Our ships cannot match their firepower." The communication channel suddenly went silent. Every frequency, every emergency channel, every military network fell quiet at the same moment. Then a new voice cut through the silence, speaking in perfect hegemony dialect with an accent that was hauntingly familiar. "This is Admiral Sue of the Terran Defense Force." Velthor's mandibles clicked frantically. Terran, the ancient word for Earth, the mythical human homeworld that existed only in refugee stories and children's tales. "For 3 centuries, you have claimed that humanity has no home. You have enslaved our people, scattered our families, and dismissed our pleas for justice. You believed we were weak because we were divided." On the display screens throughout the palace, an image appeared. A human woman in a military uniform, her face calm and determined. Behind her, Velthor could see the bridge of a warship that incorporated technology from dozens of different species. "You were wrong," Admiral Sue continued. "We have always had a home. We simply chose to keep it hidden while we learned from you. Every human you enslaved was a student. Every refugee you dismissed was a spy. Every colony you destroyed sent its knowledge back to Earth." The explosions continued across Hegemony Prime. Military installations that had stood for centuries were reduced to rubble in minutes. The mighty Hegemony fleet, pride of 300 worlds, burned in the darkness above their homeworld. "Now you will learn why Earth kept quiet for so long," Admiral Sue said. "We were not hiding in fear. We were preparing, and our preparation is complete." Velthor collapsed into his chair, watching his civilization crumble before his eyes. The humans had returned, and they had brought with them the fury of 3 centuries of suffering. The galaxy would never be the same. Fleet Admiral Zixthera stood on the command deck of his flagship, watching the largest military formation in galactic history take shape around him. The Nexus space station stretched for hundreds of kilometers. In every direction, its massive docking bays filled with warships from 30 different civilizations. The reptilian Scarix commander had lived through 40 years of warfare, conquering worlds and crushing rebellions across 3 sectors. His scaled hide bore the scars of a dozen battles, and his yellow eyes had seen entire species kneel before his fleet. But today, for the first time in his long career, he felt something he had never experienced before. Uncertainty. Status report. He hissed to his staff officers, his forked tongue tasting the recycled air of the command center. 10,437 ships now in formation, reported his aide. A young Vorthok whose crystal body chimed softly as he spoke. Representatives from the Hegemony, the Crystalline Collective, the Nephilim Consortium, and 27 smaller governments. Every major military force in the galaxy, Zixthera nodded. studying the tactical displays that showed the massive fleet arranged in perfect battle formation. Dreadnoughts, the size of small cities, floated alongside sleek destroyers and heavily armed cruisers. The combined firepower was enough to reduce entire star systems to cosmic dust. The humans surprised us with their initial attacks, he admitted to his officers. But they are still just one species, fighting against the combined might of the galaxy. No single world, no matter how advanced, can stand against this kind of force. Around the command center, his staff nodded in agreement. The logic was sound. Humanity had perhaps a few hundred ships, maybe 1,000 at most. Even with their stolen technology and surprise tactics, they could not hope to match the firepower of 10,000 Allied vessels. "Sir," called out the communications officer, "we are receiving reports from all sector commands. The alien fleet appears to be massing in the outer system. Long-range sensors detect approximately 1,000 vessels approaching our position." Zixthera smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. 1,000 against 10,000. The odds are in our favor. Yes. Signal all ships to prepare for battle. Today we will end this human rebellion once and for all. The space around the Nexus hummed with activity as the galaxy's greatest military leaders prepared for what they believed would be an easy victory. Weapon systems powered up, shields activated, and millions of alien warriors took their positions at battle stations. Then space itself seemed to tear open. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their ships appearing simultaneously at dozens of different points around the Nexus. But these were not the same vessels that had attacked the individual worlds. These ships were massive, sleek, and clearly built for one purpose. Total War Captain Hayen stood on the bridge of the lead dreadnought, watching the enemy fleet through the main viewing screen. His ship was 3 kilometers long and incorporated technology from every species that had ever underestimated human intelligence. The hull was made from Vorthok crystal that could bend light itself. The weapons used Scarix plasma cores that burned hotter than small stars. The shields employed Nephilim phase technology that could make the ship partially invisible. But the real weapon was knowledge. "Analysis complete," reported his tactical officer. "We have detailed intelligence on every ship in their formation. Hull specifications, weapon capabilities, shield frequencies, and command structures. All data collected over the past 3 centuries by our people working in their shipyards and military academies." Hugh nodded grimly. The galaxy had made a fatal mistake when they enslaved humanity. They had assumed that broken people would be grateful for any work, any shelter, any chance to survive. They never imagined that every human servant was watching, learning, and remembering. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Begin psychological warfare protocols. Target the command ships first, but avoid the escape pods. We want their leaders to spread the word about what happened here." The battle began not with massive explosions or dramatic ship-to-ship combat, but with something far more devastating precision. The human fleet did not attack randomly or charge forward like barbarians. Instead, they moved with the calculated efficiency of surgeons, each ship knowing exactly where to strike for maximum effect. They targeted the communication arrays first, cutting off coordination between the different alien fleets. Then they went after the fuel supplies, stranding entire battle groups without power. Finally, they struck at the command vessels, taking out the officers who might have been able to organize a defense. "How do they know exactly where to hit us?" screamed Fleet Admiral Zixthera as his flagship shuddered under precise weapon fire. "It is as if they have the blueprints for every ship in our fleet." His aide looked up from a damage report, his crystal face flickering with fear. "Do have our blueprints? Humans working in our shipyards for the past 50 years, they were not just laborers, they were spies." Around the Nexus, the galaxy's greatest military force began to fall apart. Ships that had never known defeat found themselves outmaneuvered by vessels that anticipated their every move. Commanders who had conquered worlds discovered that their enemies knew their personal weaknesses, their tactical preferences, and their breaking points. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the combined fleet of 30 civilizations had ceased to exist. Some ships had been destroyed, others had surrendered, and many had simply fled in terror. The Nexus itself burned in the darkness, its massive structure twisted and broken. Captain Heon watched the debris field that had once been the galaxy's most powerful military force. 300 years of patience, planning, and sacrifice had led to this moment. Humanity had finally revealed its true strength, and the galaxy would never underestimate them again. Admiral Wu stepped carefully through the broken crystal that had once been the most powerful political center in the galaxy. The Galactic Council chambers lay in ruins, their soaring walls cracked and their polished floors covered with debris. The great dome that had housed the debates of hundreds of species was open to space, shattered pieces floating in the void like frozen tears. His boots crunched on fragments of what had been the speaker's platform, where just days ago Ambassador Velter had laughed at human dreams of recognition. Now the proud hegemony representative knelt among the wreckage, his forearms bound behind his back and his mandibles clicking with terror. "Please," Velthor whispered, his voice barely audible above the sound of emergency life support systems. "We did not know. Your people seemed so weak, so scattered across the galaxy. How could we have known you were planning this?" Admiral Wu stopped in front of the fallen ambassador, studying the creature who had spent decades crushing human hopes. There was no anger in the human commander's face, only a quiet satisfaction that came from justice finally served. "We were exactly what we needed to be," Wu said softly. "Patient, observant, united by something your species could never understand, the memory of home." Around them, human soldiers moved through the ruins with practiced efficiency. They were not looting or destroying, but carefully documenting everything they found. Government records, military databases, financial accounts, all the information needed to rebuild a galaxy that had been ruled by fear and oppression for too long. "Your people worked in our factories," Velthor continued, his voice growing stronger as desperation took hold. "They cleaned our buildings, served our meals, maintained our ships. They were nothing but servants and slaves. How could servants bring down the greatest civilization in galactic history?" Wu smiled grimly. "That was your mistake. You saw our people as broken refugees and assumed they would stay broken. You never realized that every human you enslaved was watching, learning, and remembering. Every one of them was sending information back to Earth. Through the broken dome, they could see human ships moving through the orbital spaces around the Council world. The vessels were not attacking anymore, providing aid to the civilian populations and maintaining order while the old government structure collapsed. For 300 years we studied you," Wu continued, walking to what had been the central podium, where species had once begged for recognition. "Every weapon you built, every strategy you used, every weakness in your character. Our people worked in your shipyards and learned how to build better ships. They served in your armies and discovered your military secrets. They cleaned your government buildings and copied your most classified documents. Across the galaxy, the same scene was being repeated on hundreds of worlds. Human refugees were emerging from hiding places they had occupied for generations. They came out of slave camps, underground settlements, and forgotten colonies that had survived by staying invisible. On the mining world of Kepler 4 for 2B, where Commander Tay had died sending his final message to Captain Hannah, human workers put down their tools and walked away from the quarries where they had labored for decades. The alien overseers could only watch as their entire workforce disappeared into the forests, heading for pickup points where Earth ships waited to take them home. In the crystal cities of the Vorthok Collective, human servants quietly left their posts in government buildings, taking with them detailed knowledge of every political secret and military plan. Their alien employers found themselves helpless without the people they had taken for granted for so long. On the gas giant stations of the Nephilim Consortium, human technicians shut down the life support systems and communication arrays before boarding evacuation ships. The floating cities that had relied on human expertise to function began to drift powerless through the toxic atmosphere. Admiral Wu activated his personal communicator and began broadcasting. To every surviving government, every remaining military force, and every species that had participated in the oppression of humanity, "This is Admiral Wu of the Terran Defense Force," he announced. "The old order is finished. The Galactic Council is dissolved. The age of slavery and exploitation is over." He paused, looking out at the stars through the broken dome. Somewhere, out there, millions of humans were finally free to return to the world that had never forgotten them. "Earth offers new terms to all surviving governments," he continued. "We will protect innocent civilians regardless of their species. We will establish fair trade agreements that benefit everyone. We will end the practice of enslaving sentient beings and guarantee the rights of all species to exist in freedom." Broadcast reached every corner of the galaxy, carried by communication networks that humans had helped build and maintain. On thousands of worlds, alien leaders listened to the terms with growing relief. They had expected conquest and revenge. Instead, they were being offered something they had never experienced: justice. "We do not seek to rule you," Wu concluded. "We seek to protect you from the mistakes of the past. Humanity will serve as guardians of galactic peace, not because we conquered you, but because we understand what it means to suffer under oppression." Velthor looked up at the human admiral with something approaching wonder. "You could destroy us all," he whispered. "Why offer mercy to those who showed you none?" Admiral Wu smiled sadly. "Because that is what makes us human. We remember our pain, but we choose to build something better." Earth was no longer a myth, whispered in refugee camps. It was the new center of galactic civilization, and humanity had finally come home.